There was. We have a last. They gave it to you last time.
Don't you think that?
You need it? I mean, you can just use your last time you get size.
What's that?
Well, yeah, but there's been a comment about keeping orders like that. Gavel helps. Thank you. Ooh,
I'll break
man,
the table.
that is a heavy one.
Where's the little pounding
A short
rock?
hay mallet.
Take him, he threw it. Yeah, I know you would throw it. Nice.
That's what I told her. Nobody.
Yeah.
We are. I'd like to call the room to order. We are continuing the public hearing from our last meeting for the 110 Smithfield Tax Increment Financing Plan. Please call the roll.
Kelly Kabilski. Adam Royd.
Here.
Steve Sarver.
Here.
Jerry Nolte.
Here.
Melissa Wilson.
Here.
Don Hanks.
Here.
Jennifer Langston Justice. Check. Bruce Kramer.
Here.
Linda Buckmiller.
Here.
Denise Harwood.
Here.
Scott Jacoby.
Here.
Jim Staley. I don't think he's joined us yet. He's going to join us via Zoom today.
Thank you very much. We will go to, I believe, there is a presentation scheduled, Ms. Miller.
Yep, we're just going to go through the changes that I did in my memo. First, I'm going to enter into the record the notice requirements, notified DOR and DED that we had a continued hearing, and then the revised TIF plan, the notice, the taxing jurisdictions that was mailed out, and then the notification again of DOR and DED of the notice of revisions that was mailed out. So I'm going to give that to Linda at the end of the meeting for the record. And then I'm just going to go through my memo. So first off, they had some changes in pages 3 and 4. The definition of economic activity taxes had been updated, which include the statutory provisions for the treatment of sales taxes if a retail establishment is transferred in to the TIF from within the county. We have been assured that there is not going to be a businesses being transferred from within the county. But if that changes, we will obviously be negotiating the transfer of that base sales tax to be transferred as well to the taxing jurisdictions. So that was discussed.
Excuse me, do we want to go through and get questions? Would you be more comfortable taking questions as you go along?
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
at the
fine.
Stop of each Roman numeral?
Yeah, whatever's easiest for you guys.
Yeah, the question I had
Mhm.
was on the bringing in of an existing business from other parts of the county.
Mhm.
What is the time limit, or is there a time limit? What's
There's a time limit. So within a year, if the business transfers outside of a year, then the sales tax base does not transfer. But if it's within the first year, it would.
From what date? That was really the question was, is it from
Approval of the TIF.
excuse me?
Approval of the TIF.
But the construction won't be done for 15 months, right?
Right, but they would generally negotiate that within. This was something that we would talk to the development team about and negotiate within the TIF contract, the transfer of base, even if it happened outside the year. So statutorily, if it happened within the year, the base would transfer, but that's a negotiation point that we can work within the TIF contract, that if something would happen, if there would be a transfer outside of the year, that the city could request the developer within the TIF contract to still transfer that base.
I would just want to make sure because absolutely, of course, representing the county,
Mhm.
I'm not interested in just trading places. and
Right.
So, yeah, that just seemed a little vague, and it is in our, it is what we're voting on. So I thought that it was a relevant point and might get some clarification on that a little bit later.
Yep,
But
no
but
problem.
please, unless there's any other questions on that point.
My only other question was, what does that guarantee entail? Is there a contract guarantee or how is that spelled out?
It would be, so the way that we've taken care of it in the past is that we have a certification of the base sales tax by the county. They'll let us know what that was in the year prior to the TIF being approved. And then that would just be taken care of when the city administers the TIF. They keep track of what that base would be and then would transfer that. Or just let those taxing jurisdictions know that they keep that portion. That's not the portion that's being transferred into the special allocation fund.
Thank you.
Please go right ahead unless there are any further questions. Please proceed.
Okay, there was an update to page 6. The special allocation fund definition was updated to include at least 2 separate segregated accounts. This change would be if a surplus pilot is anticipated, it would be its own segregated account from within the pilot's account. So it would be kept separate. So within the financing plan, page 10, the estimated project costs, redevelopment project costs increased approximately $250,500 or $713. This was primarily due to an increase in asbestos remediation costs. Page 10, source of funds. The amount of pilots is decreased, which is a result of a 30% surplus pilot to the property tax generating taxing jurisdictions. The amount of EATs decreased as a result of lower expected sales in 2024, and also because construction is being pushed back as well. They aren't going to capture quite as much in 2024 as they expected. So that has decreased. The developer also anticipates a lower amount of debt to be financed, but has increased the amount of equity to be provided. Total TIF revenues expected to pay for the reimbursable project costs increased from $1,229,000 to $1,251,551, which is approximately $22,551. Page 11, payments in lieu of taxes, anticipated assessed valuation and payments in lieu of taxes. Section, the projected assessed valuation has decreased. This is due to changes in the amounts input into the base formula. The development team worked with Clay County to work on how Clay County anticipated these to be assessed. And so changes in that changed the base formula, which decreased it. And I know that they can touch on that later if you have any questions on that. Page 12, payments in lieu of taxes, surplus pilots. The development team has included a 30% surplus pilot, which would result in approximately $1.5 million flowing back to taxing jurisdictions. Exhibit G was updated to include the surplus taxes to be provided to each individual taxing jurisdiction. The obvious change here was that the school district is no longer receiving the 50% capital contribution, and instead all taxing jurisdictions imposing an ad valorem tax will receive a 30% surplus pilot. Just to note, this is not being shown for the fire and ambulance because they are receiving 100% reimbursement back under their statutory provision. Page 13, cost benefit analysis. The net present value benefit has decreased. This is primarily due to a decrease in the sales projected for 2024 and a decrease in the amount of revenues flowing back to the school district. And again, same reason for decrease in sales that I just mentioned. Exhibit D, you can see in your memo that the sources and uses changed. As you can see, moved out of hard construction costs and into the asbestos remediation, the demolition costs was the primary change. Exhibit E was updated to reflect the TIF EATs captured, the 30% surplus pilots and the TIF income net of a surplus, which is the amount of pilots to be captured by the TIF. Exhibit G was updated to include a summary page to show a breakdown of the projected taxes with redevelopment and without. Additionally, columns were added to each taxing jurisdiction showing the amount of surplus pilots to receive by each taxing jurisdiction. Exhibit I was updated to include increases in the IRR. So IRR without incentives increased from 5.89% to 7.15%, and IRR with incentives increased from 10.69% to 11.08%. And that was a summary of their changes.
Are there any questions on the changes? Seeing none?
All right, I think you can open it up for discussion.
Very good. That's what I was kind of what I was waiting for. Was there another presentation?
We didn't ask the developer to have a presentation. We just thought if you guys had questions about any of the particular changes that they could come up and discuss it. So that was kind of the thought process there, if you all are okay with that.
Developer like to come up and possibly discuss that, maybe even reflect on some of the alterations that were done. If you have anything you'd like to say, we'd be certainly happy to hear from you. It's not necessary, it's not required.
Right.
Make sure your mic is on.
Sure.
There we are.
My name is Don Coleman. I work with the developer and have been working on a lot of the numbers part of this. guess really any questions that you have, she did a really good job summarizing what we changed and had some really good requests of us as far as presentation of the data. And I think it helped some. So we made those changes. We prepared our original numbers all the way back in November last year. And so we've been continuing to get market data and talking, to contractors and all those types of things. It's a moving target, but we're still feeling pretty confident about what we've given you. Luckily, as you may have heard, both interest rates and inflation have kind of moderated a little. So we're feeling good about that. Supply chain issues have gotten a little better. So just as far as looking out at the development activity, we're feeling pretty good about it. The big change, obviously, is the 30% surplus. And as you'll note from the last time, we had different percentages for every different group. And this time it's just 30% across the board for each participating jurisdiction, which it looks very equitable. And everybody gets something, everybody pitches in. The big thing we did is we set that 30% so that whether the commission wants to go with what we proposed previously or go in this direction, it's about the same equivalency. So it's to the developer. And we felt that was important to do, just because then you're really looking apples to apples between the two proposals. So that's the big change. Any questions on it, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions or comments? Please proceed.
I understood they're gonna buy 3 parking lots. And I understood one of those was this grass area back here. But it looks like that's not true. There's 2 lots by the funeral home. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm sorry, if you're going to comment, please come forward. Also, I'd like to make sure that the parking lots we're talking about are part of the TIF plan. So let's kind of make sure that we are on point, although, I want to keep the conversation as broad as possible. But, let's make sure that we're aware of, when we're talking about a specific area. So
That I do want to make. It's fine. It's just my voice is so loud outside of this. That parking lot back behind the senior center is not included in the TIF plan. That is not a part of the TIF. It's the 2 parking lots adjacent to the funeral home and the one that's right beside the hospital and behind the abandoned house. Those 3 are the ones that are currently involved with this TIF plan.
But while we are talking about the parking lots and all that, clearly we want to make sure that we have as broad a conversation as possible, because it is all part of a whole. So, but it is important for us to make the distinction whether or not it is involved and how it would impact in the surrounding areas. So I think we as a commissioner be able to make that differentiation to when we're coming to our judgment as far as the parking goes. But I think it's a conversation worth having. So please go right ahead.
Yeah, Don, I will say that we have been talking with the city about this lot that's back behind the senior citizen facility here for additional parking.
I didn't know if, and because these are part of the TIF plan, are we assured that the parking is enough? With 85 units and you have 95 spots, and usually the city code, I think, is 1.5 per person per unit. So I just wanted to make sure that the city and everybody's on board, that we do have enough parking and it's not going to interfere with the other businesses downtown.
Yes, ma'am. We actually went to our engineers and they actually tell us how many parking spots that we need to account for this. Then we provide that information to the city and the answer is yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
And
can you
if I-
speak up a little more loudly when
Sure,
you're,
I'm sorry.
I'm having trouble
I can-
hearing myself.
You have to lick the mic, Eric.
Okay,
Mhm.
I have germ issues, so can do that though. Yes.
And if,
Everybody hear me okay? Want to say it
That's
again?
good, right
Okay.
there at that volume.
and I will also clarify, the TIF is a financing structure and a financing piece. If it is approved by the governing body based on a recommendation from you all, that plan, all of the planning items, the development would still go through the planning process like any other development. What we're looking at now is related to financing only. So I just want to clarify that.
Further questions?
My question would be in regards to callbacks and some TIFs. So repercussions, I don't see anything in here about that, like specific contract items in regards to timelines if they're not completed, et cetera, since we are borrowing money from the taxing jurisdictions. Can you comment to that, or did you think about that, or?
Yeah, that's something we'll negotiate in the TIF contract between the city and the developer.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions?
Sure. For Don. Your real estate increment on the last proposal, less than 30 days ago, was about $3 million, and now it's over $5 million. Are we 70% off?
I'm not sure what you're looking at.
Cost benefit analysis, real estate increment. that's
Excuse me,
generated.
do you have a reference that we could look at in
Yeah,
the,
sure.
that way we can all follow more effectively?
Yeah. Is it a page exhibit? Let's look at the binder and see if we see cost benefit analysis, exhibit G. Maybe,
It sounds right.
it's right before exhibit G. It looks like mine's behind exhibit E. Assessed value. This is what we're looking for.
Very good.
Mind if I take a look?
For clarification, it's exhibit E.
And by the way, this is one of the pages that was revised in the new packet that we got, so it would also be in this packet as well, correct? Wait. I think we've all got it, so please proceed.
Are we good? So in the prior, let's 1, 2, 3, 4 columns over from the left. Real estate tax increment. To the bottom. Summary. 5.1 million at the bottom. On the new one. 4 from the left. Real estate tax increment.
And you're coming over from the heading that says gross on the left.
Correct.
Very good.
Thank you. You got it, Jennifer.
Too many pages.
I know, so many pages.
So many pages. I can look at it real quick and see.
And this exhibit is important, so keep it handy.
The way that the new one works is, as I mentioned before, we were capturing various levels from various jurisdictions. This captures 100% of the pilots for the participating jurisdictions, and then 30% is remitted back. So yes, it is substantially different for that reason. We weren't, that's just the structural nature. As you follow it through, it does end up, to the developer, like I said, the same net benefit either way. But the 100% capture is what's causing it to be so different.
And who were you not capturing 100% of the pilots from last time?
Pretty much
The school
the
district.
school district and the city. And then the other ones we were capturing pretty much 100%. So now with the 30% across the board being remitted back, that's the biggest change from last time to this time is the 100% capture.
And so it looks like a net benefit to the developer of another $533,634 from last presentation.
Well, we need to look at the net present value, which is all the way out in the very far bottom right.
I know.
And it's
And just so everybody's following, far right-hand column to the bottom, summation number $4.7 million. Do we see that?
And that's under total revenue?
Total revenue. You see it total down to $4.7 million. And then they go through a discount calculation.
The gross was 4.2 there.
4.2 is the old. It's the one less than 30 days ago is 4.2 million. Now it's 4.7 million.
you know, over a 23-year period, that probably sounds pretty close to about what I would expect.
Well,
But
I know we'll disagree because you're discounting $533,000 down to $22,551 in present
that's how it
day.
works. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can only borrow against the net present value. And by the time you get to those farther out payments, 15, 20, 23 years, they're heavily discounted.
Well, I
So they
understand
don't
why you
add
do.
much.
Yeah. I understand why you do net present value. It doesn't exist in state law. I understand why developers do it. But typically when they do that, they also include the cost, and then they also include an inflationary measure to offset the cost. So you discount the benefit and you add the cost. But regardless of all this minutia on numbers, we'll be able to do some common sense math by the end of the evening that we can all do and follow. So it'd be pretty simple, because no matter how the presentation is, there is going to be a certain element of common sense that has to be applied when we approve or disapprove of this plan. So.
Further questions?
Oh, so everybody understands 4.7 million is what we're diverting to the developer over 23 years.
Right.
All right.
And from the developer's perspective, really what matters to the developer is how much can you finance against that cash flow stream?
Yeah.
And the 30% surplus worked out very closely.
Yeah.
And so even though NPV, like you said, is sort of a hypothetical framework, it's a very real framework when you get into a loan committee at a bank and they're
Yeah.
doing their calculations.
Well, and so this presentation kind of reads like it's a rehabilitation of a structure. What we can all probably agree about is that the property that we're speaking about is blighted. And there's remediation that needs to happen. And there's excessive costs that come with the remediation of that blight. If you have any question about what we're supposed to be approving this evening, you can look at the affidavit. It's an exhibit in here. It's point number 4. It explicitly says we are to be removing the excess and removing blight and the excess cost removed to blight. Okay. I think we have a fundamental disagreement because what we know this project is a demolition project. We can all look at the drawings and understand it. Word demolition is in here, right? Well, whenever you demolish the property, you should be able to put your finger pretty easily on the cost to remove the blight. We can all probably agree on that, okay? Where we get off, well, and so just backing up, when we remove the blight in a demolition situation, then that's the role of the taxpayers. We pay that, right? The role of the developer is to build a apartment complex that is 20, 40, 60, 80 units, whatever, and gives them the rate of return necessary. Okay, it's very simple. At the end of the day, if you have two developers that buy land and want to build an apartment complex, one developer has blight on it, one doesn't. The role of the taxpayer is just simply remove the blight. That puts both developers on the same level playing field. Right? That's what taxpayers are here for. Okay, this reads a lot like a rehabilitation, which they're trying to access more funds and get more reimbursement categories. And at the end of the day, that makes it excessive whenever you do the common sense math on it. And there's no two ways about it. You'll be able to do the math on it. It's going to be pretty clear cut. Okay. So you have either demolition or rehabilitation. We should be able to put a figure on demolition. And those numbers are in here. And that's how the blight removal works. But if I was in their shoes, I'm trying to get excess funds from taxpayers. You try to do what you can, right? That's the role of us, trying to figure that out. So anyway, we will discuss that further. Appreciate it.
Further comments or questions? Seeing none, are there any other persons present who would like to comment on the TIF plan? Ah, very good. Thank you. Mr. Webster, if you'd like to come forward, please. And as with all speakers who will be addressing us this evening, please make sure the microphone is on, identify yourself clearly and speak clearly in the microphone so all can hear your comments. Please proceed.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Matthew Webster. I'm an investment banker and I'm an employee of Stiefel Nicolaus. I'm here tonight as the school district's expert on tax increment financing. My firm has a long association with the school district. We worked on financing with the district for many years. I personally do a lot of work in incentive financing and specifically with TIFs. So I'm talking about, I don't know, 50 or more transactions, many hundreds of millions of dollars of development. So I do consider myself knowledgeable about these matters. And I want to come before you this evening and tell you what issues the school district has with this TIF plan and how we'd like you as the TIF commission, the recommending body, to address these issues. And I'm happy to, go into as much detail as you'd like, but I'm going to try and keep this short and focused and stay away from minutia and hit the high points. So let me just say I didn't speak at the last meeting because we weren't sure sort of what was happening. We had the TIF plan. We listened to the developer's presentation. Obviously wanted to see if there were going to be changes. So within a week of that meeting, I reached out to the city administrator and provided her with a memo. I didn't send the memo to the rest of you because there was an issue last time about sunshine laws and giving people information and having them talk about it. So I steered clear of that, but it's a public document. I'm happy to provide it to anybody. But I did give it to the city administrator. I never received the courtesy of a call or an email back from her. I'm not happy about that, but that is what happened. I did ultimately get in touch with Don Coleman from the developer, and I do appreciate Don answering many of my questions. But I just have to say, developers exist to develop, and the best way to develop is with other people's money. In this case, that other party is primarily the school district. So they're advocating for their position. That's what developers do. I'm here advocating for the residents of the school district, but I think also the residents of the city about the wise use of incentives, the appropriate use of incentives. So I'll talk a little more about that. Let me start off by saying I couldn't find any city policy regarding tax increment financing. There is a city policy on economic incentives. It it mostly is just a resuscitation of the state statute, sort of how TIF works, but there's really not much policy to it. But the school district has taken the time to create a TIF policy.
Mr. Chair, that's 3 minutes. I don't know if we hadn't noted normally.
Yeah,
in
I asked for
comment
more
period.
time than 3 minutes, so I'm going to be speaking for more than 3 minutes. Okay? You can be quiet because I don't know that you have an official role in this matter at all.
First, before we get any further, yeah, council, you do have an official role here.
You can provide with extra time as the chair's discretion, if you would like.
I think the chair chooses to exercise that discretion. That would be equally applied to people speaking on the other side of the argument. This is too important an issue, and it's important to not only the developers, but also to the city and to the people. I'm not one that likes to cut off public comment because the clock says so. Therefore, I appreciate you making it brief, but certainly you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the basic bottom line with the district's tax increment financing policy is working cooperatively with municipalities. There's been little to no cooperation between the city and the school district, despite multiple attempts by the school district to reach out, and including my attempts to reach out. The district requires a thorough and due diligence review process. I'm not aware that was done in this case. And the district considers supporting tax increment financing to utilize up to 50% of the net new property taxes for 10 years. So that's sort of the financial metrics. But as a base matter, sound public policy and it doesn't suggest the use of tax increment financing for residential projects. And it's very seldom seen in the state of Missouri because, any kind of residential project you do generates some students. I mean, we don't know what it is. The school district can speak more about the expectation. It could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 25, but that's really not the point. It's not what is this building cost the district. It's the tax base of the district, and most of the tax base of the district in Smithville is residential property. So it becomes a matter of fairness. If you give away the incentives to residential developers, then every residential developer wants an incentive. So you have to make some judgment, and this is really, I think, the purview of this committee tonight, this commission, about what's appropriate. So I'm going to tell you what the school district thinks is appropriate, and you can make your own judgment. If anybody would like a copy, I'll give these to Megan, and she can provide them to anybody she wants.
Yeah, I think, by the way, yeah, I think the best way to distribute any kind of documentation is through council. So I appreciate that.
Okay, so what's changed since the last meeting? Project costs have gone up about 250,000, mostly apparently asbestos removal. I guess the logical next question is, what else have they missed? What else is going to go up? My understanding is they don't have a hard bid on construction. So, in the current environment, that could certainly go up. And generally what happens with these projects is a developer gets some level of approval and then comes back and amends the project again and again and again. And in every tax increment plan I've ever been involved with that had an amendment, it was always sort of more money away from the taxing jurisdiction. So, we're not interested in giving them as much as they're requesting. We're certainly not interested in giving them more later. So, the numbers are moving around. So, one way to approach that is, when they have a hard bid, maybe then you approve the TIF. Scott Jacoby touched on the property taxes. So last time, the property taxes with redevelopment for 23 years showed total payments to the school district about 2.2 million. And I'm using present value dollars. I'm not discounting these dollars at some rate. So that was the third 50% surplus. Now we're looking at a 30% surplus and we're down to getting 1.3 million, about 1,356,000 to be more precise. So obviously we've gone the other direction, 857,000 or so less money. So what's still missing from this plan as far as we're concerned? There is a letter. I don't consider the letter in the TIF commission application to be evidence of financing. It's sort of a what I would call an evidence of interest by a bank. There are still many issues with the economic activity tax calculations. There are inconsistencies and corrections that need to be made. And then there's some, real omissions. The city seems to have made no effort to collect sales taxes on materials, which could be, rebated back to the developer. And there's no taxes on utilities. That's something you commonly see in other TIF plans. So the next thing I want to touch on is the city's ignoring their own process. So the city has a comprehensive plan. I think it's Comprehensive Plan 2030. Is if you go onto their website, you can find it. It was prepared, I believe, back in 2020. And that plan is supposed to be the map for city actions for all sorts of things. Development is a big part of that. And the plan talks about strategic pillars and goals. It mentions education, forging a strong partnership between the city and the school district, and how important education is to attracting and retaining population in the city. I think all those things are true. Again, unfortunately, either the city's forgotten this plan or we're just ignoring it. So
I think at this point, I think we're kind of drifting away from the core mission of the group. I think that certainly those are interesting things to hear, but I think we need to continue to stick with the actual matter at hand. So
fair enough. I will boil it down to sort of what we're looking for. The budget that the developer has provided shows $308,000 of TIF reimbursement going for land purchase from the city and the private purchase of land, which I believe Mr. Craig already owns. And so I guess the basic question that raises is, why do you need tax incentives to purchase land? Every developer for every project, in the history of development has had to purchase their own land. Now, if this land were being purchased from third parties and the land were expensive or there was some additional element to increase costs, then that could be something that is worth discussion. But simply subsidizing the developer's land costs because he'd like to, that's a hard no for the school district. What is open for school district discussion is demolition. So as Mr. Jacoby stated earlier, that's an extra cost, and that's what tax incentives are meant to do. They're meant to pay for extraordinary costs. So that is something that the school district will be willing to discuss. Utility work, asphalt and landscaping, those are also suggested as TIF reimbursables. Again, to the extent that they're somehow related to demolition or blight remediation, which is the purpose of this plan, as I understand it anyway, those would be things that would be open to discussion. And that's it. So we're not looking to help the developer hit internal rate of return. If you can't hit your numbers, redesign your project, do something cheaper, do something different. I can give some suggestions. There's a developer fee of 5% here. I know several developers that I've worked with, and if they hold for their own account, they don't charge a developer fee. So that's $600,000 right there that could stay in the project and not be paid out. So just an example, but I did want to be specific because I don't want to confuse anybody about what we're looking for. So it gets down to the appropriateness of these costs and what's reasonable. And I think I've just told you, how we feel about this. So the school district does want to be a good partner, but being a good partner means working cooperatively with the city and the developer to reach a fair resolution. We're not prepared to negotiate that resolution tonight in this meeting. We need to have a measured process and understand what the city would like to do, and those discussions haven't happened yet. so far, and again, I don't think we're responsible for any delay. We've been trying to reach out and it's just been kind of a fraught process. So here's what I'd like to ask you to do tonight. One is to continue this hearing so that we can work on a solution that's amenable to the school district and acceptable to the city and the developer. Or two, close the hearing and vote not to recommend the plan because it doesn't work. As I said, there are many flaws in this plan, and there've been some defects in the process as well. If the school district is ignored, it'll work to protect its interest and the interest of the taxpayers within the district. And the school district has lots of resources, and I believe this would lead to an expensive process with many months of delay. So
Once again, we're kind of. going far
again, that's all I'm saying. I'm just talking about what we're proposing and what's next if we can't reach some kind of resolution. So with that, I'll end my remarks.
Here
and-
is the way I'd like to proceed is, I think at least one member would like to ask you a question.
Sure.
We have another person after you. And then I think it's only fair to, if the developer would like to rebut or to make their own case, then that would be fair. So we'll get questions here. We'll go to Mr. Haggerty after you are completed, and then the applicant can come forward and have their say. With that, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you so much for that explanation. My understanding from the previous TIF commission meeting is that there were attempts between the developer and the school district prior to this process, and this is why it was brought here, is because there was no result. And correct me if I'm wrong, I heard you say there was not?
There've been discussions, but the way the discussions ended was, here's our proposal, take it or leave it, and that was the basis of the plan that was presented.
Okay, you'll get a chance to
So there-
respond, Eric.
so,
I see you there.
I mean, I would describe it as, not good faith negotiation.
But they did attempt to try and do some sort of negotiation. It wasn't just a,
No,
it wasn't just to build a wall.
Yeah, there were
Okay.
certainly negotiations.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
be clear because
Yeah.
I felt like the picture that you were painting was that they didn't even open the door. And while I understand that you do not agree with what they
Right.
did, the door was open. There were conversations. There just was not a result.
Many months ago, but certainly not since the TIF plan was presented, and not anytime since the last meeting.
Okay, and one other thing. So the 10-year, Megan, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't been a part of a lot of these committees. That's not really possible, is it? The 10-year, because it's statutorily required that it's a number of years.
What do you mean?
So they
Sorry.
have in their resolution here, and I could read
10
this
years in
if
their
everybody
resolution.
wanted to hear.
No,
but
it can be shorter. A TIF can absolutely be shorter. The
Okay.
maximum amount of years a TIF can run is
Maximum
23
20
years.
Thank you
Yes.
so much
Yep.
for,
Very common for cities to impose limitations on the capture of tax income.
thank you very much.
All right.
Further question?
Got one.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Would you mind reading the third whereas down there?
I think I just gave all my copies away.
There you
Whereas the district will work cooperatively with municipalities that responsibly utilize tax increment financing to increase the tax base within district. Is that the one you're
Yeah,
talking?
that's it. So do you know the figure of what the tax base is currently on this property right now? You know what that figure is? What the-
Yeah, yes, I
the school
do. It's
gets?
about $4,000. And here's what I would say. Yeah, this notion of but for, so but for these incentives that this project wouldn't be done, it's frankly absurd in this case. I understand that the developer's application says, but for these incentives, I can't do this project. But the notion that a valuable piece of property in the middle of this city couldn't be developed a different way by either that developer or somebody else and go back on the tax rolls, I just think that's not likely. The developer is working diligently on this, and he hasn't torn down the building because he wants the incentives to help with that. But if the developer doesn't move forward, I suspect they'll do something else or they'll sell it and somebody else will come in. That's what typically happens with these projects. I've seen that over and over
So
again.
it generates 4,000 a year now.
Correct.
So after 23 years, the value of that building is supposed to be 15 million. is what I'm hearing.
It certainly could be. I mean,
Okay, and then what will that generate at that point?
a lot more, several $100,000. I have no quarrel with the computation of value that's the developer worked hard with the county assessor to make the best assumptions, and the best presentation of those materials they could. But I would just say that the way the district looks at this is, we don't approve every incentive deal. We rarely approve residential incentive deals. So, we might like the next guy who comes in with either much lower incentives or no incentives at all. I mean, most development, and especially most apartment development, gets done without incentives, especially north of the river. It's different, all different places, but again,
And I think what Mr. Hanks is getting at is, you would have to go back to the analysis on the cost benefit. So the benefit is the increase in taxes, right? So we've had this conversation and we're not acknowledging any cost, right? So if you acknowledge costs, then we're in a negative. So
I mean, waiting a couple of years for the right deal or getting the right deal from this developer, those are preferred alternatives to accepting what's before you tonight.
Anyone else have any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Has the school sent anybody to the Economic Development Committee? Because for the town, that's who makes recommendations for the policy. So if you don't like the policy, we want stakeholders to come in. I'm brand new to the EDC, been there about a year. But we definitely want stakeholders to make this right here go smoother. So if
Well-
anyone could come in to talk to us about what you'd like to see
sure.
in a policy, that would be something. we
So
would
I'll say
like.
this, school districts notoriously, they like to stay in their lane. They hate when situations like this happen. It's very uncomfortable for everybody. And the city has all kinds of discussion in their documents about how they're working cooperatively. So I would just say to you that the city approaching the school district about using school district funds for their economic development, I think that typically comes from the city. But I would also say that based on what you just said, the school district will become much more engaged with that.
If there is an issue with, like you mentioned, the policy.
Yeah.
That we can work on that, but we need stakeholders to come forward and tell us these things before we have these
This-
battle royale
this is-
type meetings.
Hold on, go ahead and let the gentleman finish, and then you can
Yeah.
jump in.
So it's I think at the end of the month, every
Right.
Tuesday, come on in and tell
Well,
us.
I didn't,
what you want.
the chairman, didn't want me to get too far afield. And I don't want to confuse the matter, but it seemed as if the policy, hadn't been applied in this case.
One additional question. So there was an accusation made about non-communication. Can anybody address that?
I did receive an email. I forwarded it to our attorney, and you did receive a response and indicating that it was on my behalf. It
Right.
didn't come the next day. I
Well-
apologize that I didn't call and acknowledge that the information had come. We provided that response after we had done the research
Right.
to get all of the information around. It was a voluminous list of questions. We provided our response and indicated that if they had questions of the developer, it suggested that they reach out to them as well.
To be clear, I've done dozens and dozens.
Okay,
of-
but she did address it, it sounds like, and that was
No.
my concern.
No,
is-
no, I had specific questions for the city. There was no engagement and there were no answers. I was able to get many of the issues that I did have resolved with the developers consultant, and I do appreciate him talking to me. But generally, these plans, in almost all cases, the city staff takes the lead in the process. Here, it appeared that they had turned it over to legal counsel and I didn't have legal questions, or they turned it over to the developers. And that's unusual in my experience.
And
Is there, before you get a second shot, I want to make sure everybody's had a first chance to ask questions or anything. Please proceed.
And Adam, just to fill in the blanks there, I think the point is on the policy, there's no mention of using incentives for residential in the economic development policy of the city. incentives are mentioned for industry and clusters of industries and so forth. And so this is varying from the city policy to use incentives residential, which doesn't exist in the city policy.
Well, the policy's vague. Like I said, I'm new to the EDC. I have a background in policy. I'm a federal employee. I am a management program analyst. So policy's like what I do, but in order to have good policy, you need stakeholders. So if we were gonna, it doesn't say you can't, it says it's preferred. So there, and whether or not that was done on purpose or not, I don't know. I wasn't here for that. So when it says they're not following the policy, that's not really true because the policy is vague. So whether they made it vague intentionally so that maybe the city can have more leeway with their vote versus the
Well,
policy itself, I can't speak to that, but I wouldn't say it's a violation. Like the preferred policy is 15 years, right? This is 23. So even though it says preferred, that doesn't say we won't, right? It doesn't say if you come in anything over 15, it's going to automatically be rejected. There's no strong language like that at all. It's very vague.
The policy is very skeletal and a lot of policies are like that. So I'm not saying that it's out of the ordinary. But what struck me was the city's comprehensive plan, which does talk about the specific use of incentives and doesn't once mention residential, but does mention over and over again how important a good school district is. And the most important thing to a school district is its tax base. And once you start granting incentives for projects like this, what's to keep the next 100 developers who walk through the door from asking for the same thing?
A solid policy.
Yeah, which you just said, you know, either it exists and they're ignoring it or it's too vague. And again, the city can do lots of things. You know, the city could create special overlay districts that create taxes and they could give those taxes to the developer. The city could write checks. I've got clients who do that sort of thing all the time.
Once
But-
again, we're kind of getting
Yeah,
a little far
again,
afield.
I didn't bring this up, Jerry. I'm just
No,
responding.
I understand that, but I mean, it's just, you
I
know,
appreciate it.
yes, please proceed.
This was new to the school district. We did meet with Mr. Craig and his team a few times. I did try to speak with Ms. Wagner about the project. She said she couldn't talk about that with me, that we need to work that out with the developer. They hadn't got the plan yet to have conversations. I know we weren't able to speak about the project. That wasn't something that we were allowed to discuss. I'm assuming that was the conversation we had, is that we couldn't discuss the project because it hadn't gone to you yet. So initially, I think we're trying to find answers and talk through concerns, and that conversation was not permitted. But we did work with the developer to try to come to some type of resolution, which we did not.
And to answer your question, just on top of that, negotiation, you know, when you negotiate, you're assuming that there's a back and forth. There's not a back and forth in this. There was no, will you do this? Will you do that? That never happened. So we did take meetings with the developer and they presented each time what the new number looked like. There was no like exchange on, this is too much, you need to go back, and they come back with something smaller, nothing like that.
So again, my experience in Smithville is long, and I think the only other tax increment plan they've ever done was the grocery TIF that they did back in 2017. And I worked on the school district's behalf on that transaction too. And it also went, you know, it was very contentious and it was not a good resolution as far as the school district was concerned. So there's some history.
With that, don't there any further questions? I'd like to go ahead and move on. We certainly appreciate the time that you took. And like I said, we'll go to
Thank you all.
Mr. Haggerty next.
Hello, I'm Scott Haggerty. I'm not gonna be near as winded. I'm not even presenting any new information that hasn't already been stated tonight, but I'm at least gonna get a chance to speak my piece. The game of business is about making money, and no one should fault Mr. Craig and his team for pursuing every avenue possible, including tax incentive or tax increment financing. It's all on the table. That said, we're here to determine whether it's a wise use of taxpayers' money or not. And whether it's wise for this community, and then to offer a recommendation. The need is to remove a blight. That cost originally came in at $250,000. It has increased since then, but that's what it originally came in at. The ask is into the millions. This potential property has potential bringing residents with children. It will add a tax load to the district without any compensation. It will also add people into the district that don't have children. Well, they're going to enjoy the benefits of our community without paying a portion of their taxes. So they enjoy Smithville, get to enjoy everything in the community without paying their portion. There are plenty of downtown events where parking is at a premium, where you can't find parking and you have to park a long ways away and walk. This project is going to take some of those parking and take it out of the public parking and basically give it to, it will all be consumed by the residents of this apartment complex. So parking will get worse. And one other final point is the ROI for the investors under 10 years. And he's asking for an ROI for the taxpayer in 23. So the question is this project worth the taxpayer's investment? Well, $250,000 of it is. The rest simply is not.
Thank you very much. If the applicant would like to make some comments, since there was rather extensive comment made before, certainly be welcome to speak now, or if you'd rather wait till a little later, it's up to you, whatever your preference.
To reintroduce myself from last time, I'm Andrew Leonard with the Levy Craig Law Firm, one of the counsel representing the developer team, along with my colleague Daniel Yoza, who's in the back.
Maybe just a little louder.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry.
you.
I'm Andrew Leonard with the Levy Craig Law Firm. I spoke briefly last week. Myself and my colleague Daniel Yoza are legal counsel for the developer team. And I'm primarily going to respond on some of the specific points that Mr. Webster presented. I don't think it's worth everyone's time for me to go through point by point. Obviously, we have some disagreements with his analysis. But what I first want to start off with is a bigger picture topic, which is there has been I don't even want to say an insinuation. There's been a pretty direct comment from Mr. Webster. I don't know if he's speaking 100% on behalf of the school district or whether that's his own analysis, but that somehow the city has not participated in a professional or diligent manner in this transaction. That is categorically false. I've been working on this transaction personally for over a year, and the city is represented by Miss Miller here, which is a fantastic job. And I know that, as a legal counsel, when I'm working with someone that has legal counsel on the other side, I've got to work with that person's legal counsel. So I know that Eric, who offices across the street, has been working with city officials in informal capacities or talking about this project with members of the community for a long time. We've been working with Miss Miller for quite some time on this project. I know that she has passed on our comments, our thoughts to various city officials. We get feedback, we revise things, we've revised this TIF plan I don't know how many times. I think it's also important to give you an apology for getting shouted at a little while earlier. That's absolutely unnecessary. So the city has participated in a meaningful way in this project, cares about doing what's right for the city, not necessarily this project, but what's right for the city and the school district. The next thing I want to jump into is I've been working, Mr. Webster and he's been working in incentives work for quite a while. I've also been working in incentives work for quite a while, nearly 20 years. I've done several TIF projects here in the Kansas City area, Chapter 100 bond financing, CIDs, all kinds of other TIF stuff. And I can tell you from my perspective, as someone who has a lot of experience in this field, that residential developments, especially when we're talking about things in terms of an industry, residential development, not the houses that we all build to live in for ourselves. I believe that's likely what's prohibited under the city's plan, but residential development, there's no statutory provision against it. It's not banned by the city's plan. And I have seen several TIF or pardon me, I've seen several projects, residential in nature, receive incentives in the Kansas City area. You know, one thing that we're sort of dancing around here is, yes, you know, Mr. Craig and his development team are building this residential apartment complex because they're developers. That's what they do. Now, this particular project is very close to home to Mr. Craig because he lives here in the community. But it is not uncommon, nor is it inappropriate, and I know everybody knows this, for developers to seek incentives for various projects when they're developing them. Nothing that we're requesting in the plan is out of bounds, is not allowed, is illegal in any way. I think they're all very reasonable costs, and yes, we understand that what we're asking for requires some input and some assistance from the city to get this project going. I don't think that's unusual, and we've been pretty clear about that from the get-go, and that's ultimately what a TIF is. I mean, we all know why we're here. And I'll come back to that here towards the end, but I think it's very important also to address, there has been some comments from the school district and from Mr. Webster that meetings were not held with the school district. You know, I know Mr. Craig, and he can speak to this as well, but I know he's met with the school district members several times over the years. I personally sat in a couple meetings with the school district. And it's important to note that from my own personal experience, that when we've been in these meetings with the school district, we are trying to come to an accommodation with them. I know they have different interests than we do, and we don't expect that everyone's going to agree with the project. We have come back towards the school district without any assurance of approval. We've moved our numbers in their direction. We did so with the previous TIF plan that we presented. We all were here 3 weeks ago and talked about how not just the school district, but a school district was a loud voice in this concept of let's get a different version of the TIF plan that allows for a surplus concept, which allows for the school district to have the flexibility to use the money that goes their way for whatever they want to do. That was additional time and costs that the developer team incurred, and I think it's a fair ask, and we did that. So that's another item that we've moved towards the school district on. I know that you know, there is another a theme that it seems to be running through, which is, well, let's only fund the cost of demolition for the project. I can tell you from a perspective of the developer that threatens the financial viability of the project to only fund those costs. The developer is certainly asking for something that's very fair with respect to these types of projects. We want to be accommodating to the school district and feel that we have been very accommodating to the school district. I know that in Mr. Jacoby, he has had pointed questions, as he's entitled to have, about our numbers and our plans. And frankly, at various turns, he seemed uninterested in hearing what we have to say, and that's okay. But it is important for everyone to know that we have tried again and again to be accommodating to not only this board, but the school district and the city. And I think that the last thing I'll say is, you know, this project is ultimately a cooperation between the city and the developer to take what is currently an underutilized, blighted portion of your beautiful downtown and turn it into something very good, very vibrant, you know, address a housing need from the community. This is a positive project that's going to bring residents to your city. It's going to take that old hospital and get it moving again. On that note, prior to Mr. Craig's acquisition of the property, the property sat vacant and I think undeveloped for the previous 10 years. So the insinuation that some other developer was just going to come in and magically do this, and that without any incentives, well, that didn't happen. we want to work together. We've been here wanting to work together. We'll continue to be here. We ask that you look at the project, see its benefit, and just give it that chance.
Are there any questions of the applicant? Or did you have also something you wanted to add?
Yeah, it's gonna tail in if that's okay.
Right, I'm thinking here with the whole applicant group, so I'll go on to the next person once your group is finished. Proceed.
Thank you.
Oh, please go ahead and identify yourself.
Eric Craig.
Thank you.
Thank you. Couple of things. Linda, you mind putting graphs up? For me? Thank you. I want to kind of dive in a little bit about the discussion about communication with the school district. I actually met with the school district 3 years ago. Members of the school board and the superintendent at that point in time. At that point, just so everyone knows, our original ask was in the 90 percentile range. I had a very good meeting with them. I was informed on actual cost of what it costs to educate a student. We had great conversations. I went back to my partners and said, hey guys, listen, I mean, honestly, I didn't feel good about it myself. I didn't realize the cost per student. At that point in time, we had several other meetings over a period of time. And I kind of felt like being obviously a citizen of this community, that I wanted to be as transparent about this project from the very beginning. And so I did so by meeting with the school district and also with the city. And just to let them know, I mean, along the entire process, even from the minute that I received the floor plans, to layouts, to cost and those things associated with it. I also want to make record that, to be totally transparent, that I'd met with the school board and the superintendent, and we had a great meeting. And at that point in time, I'd kind of agreed upon the 70 percentile being okay. Comment was made to me is that, Eric, that in these situations with these projects, with TIFs and school districts, there's not ever going to be a school district that ever wants or likes a TIF. And I said, hey, we understand that, but everybody was in agreement about that building and that site. Again, that is blighted. This is not a project that has a store that was a building that is still there today. And they built a new one a mile up the road. I'm not going to dive into that because it's a touchy situation and subject with even myself. But the accusation that there was not communication, once, there was a school board change, the superintendent left, Denise, we worked with her. She's an interim superintendent. We had multiple meetings. In those meetings, I'll be honest with you, I was heard by several. There was several that I was not heard by. Some were confrontational. Some were uncomfortable by everybody that was sitting at the table. Furthermore, I want to add that accusations were made at those meetings. They did not go well, but we still moved the needle in the other direction to work with the school board. At that point in time, we went back to them and said, our original ask, when I met with Scott and Denise were there, it was 78%. We went to 70% after the next meeting. Then we went to 60%, and then we went to 50%. And on October 10th, I just pulled up an email where I'd sent that to Denise and I said, we'd like to meet with you again to discuss this. And I was informed via email that a meeting was not necessary. So the comments that were made are, quite frankly, they're false. Okay. Sorry, I'm a little upset about that because when you're transparent about things and people say you're not, it's pretty upsetting. So one thing that keeps getting talked about a lot is that this is going to be, costing tax dollars. And, I look at this obviously from a couple different ways as a citizen, a business person, and then also as a developer in this situation. But without this project, you're seeing the number that was talked about. Don, you asked this question, it's $4,224 a year. That building is sitting there falling apart. Okay. It is the biggest eyesore of our community. Will you go to the next? Thank you. Year 5, $48,749 going to the school district. Go to year 10, $56,715 going to the school district. Year 20, $78,994 going to the school district. And then after a 23 over year 1 through 23, If this project doesn't happen, that building sits there. Which, just so you know, that building would be down, but for some reason, I don't know who's responsible for TIFs, but you can't do a TIF if the building's gone. Okay, you lose all of your leverage to do so. I would have that building down in a heartbeat. But without this project, that building just capturing the tax rate it's at right now and assessed through the county we got their information from is $87,182. With this project, with TIF incentives, it's 1.3 million, almost $1.4 million to the school district. After that, basically, it's over $300,000 a year. So for me, which I'm a tax paying citizen of this community and a business person, I have students that go to school here. This also fills the biggest void that we have right now in our community, and that's workforce housing. That's housing for teachers, for employees, for growth from a commercial standpoint. This is big picture. I look at this as big picture. This will also, in my opinion, this is going to open the door and start to other developers that are coming here, not asking for incentives, but they're going to be coming here because they're going to say, just for example, I had a planning and zoning meeting where I came and spoke about some townhouses that were built north of 169 highway off of W. They were referred to as leapfrog. It was kind of out a little bit of a ways. Anyways, I knew that those things would fill up because I talk to people every day that are looking for housing. That filled a big void. I think they leased out in like a matter of months. This project, I know will lease out. I know it's going to work, and I know it's going to cause other developers to come here, and they're going to commit to Smithville, and they're going to build more apartments. Some people don't like to hear that, but I'm sorry. If you have a problem going to McDonald's, and you're not getting your cheeseburger, you got to wait for your fries. That's because they don't have employees that live here. This is going to provide a housing opportunity for a tremendous amount of people, and it's good growth for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have any? Yes, please proceed.
I have a question. Maybe I didn't understand this. When you started the conversation with the school, you said you guys were at a 70% instead of what the 30% is?
It was 30% to them, 70% to us, yes.
And that's how it started way back. when?
Originally, our ask was like 93%, I believe.
You were at 93, they were at 7%?
Correct.
Okay. So, all right, because I was thinking you were saying it the other way around. I was gonna say, what?
Well, no, so sorry about that. It was just the feedback or the comment was that there was no negotiations. The negotiations have always been on our side. I mean, we've always been requesting the meetings, and we've been moving the needle in their direction.
Before we go further, I feel as though I might have been ignoring our members online. Do they, and I'm not sure exactly, how would they be chiming in? Would they just wave?
They
or-
raise their hand.
Okay, I hope you guys are keeping track of that. Do the members online have any questions or comments at this time?
I don't have any questions.
No questions from either of those online. Okay, yes, Melissa.
Question, it was talked about here about, we're talking residential. And truthfully, when I first started seeing this and was starting thinking, oh, a TIF with residential. Then I started thinking, okay, it's residential, yes, but will these always be rented? And if they're always rented, that's a business, correct? Okay.
That's how I look at it.
And isn't there a commercial component in this?
Yes.
There's is it 10%?
Well, I guess 11 point.
The bottom floor with theoretically a restaurant is my understanding.
There's more space. We have a restaurant tenant who is not from Clay County, by the way. I'll add that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Always like to have new blood.
Okay.
7,800 square feet, is that what
I
the
think it's
commercial?
75.
I see what you mean. So certainly,
A restaurant tenant is needing 4,000 square feet.
right, I was gonna say that would certainly accommodate more than just an average sized restaurant, at least in my experience.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
I mentioned earlier that there was negotiating going on, so I don't love saying that we said we didn't, whenever I said we did. I also have the email with me that you were referring to. I received one on September 29th that said, here's our latest TIF, latest and final TIF. We will be willing to meet, but we will not be willing to negotiate any further. Let me know if a meeting's needed. After consulting with various people at the end, you're right, on November 10th or October 10th, I said, thank you for your email. As of September 29th, we've received a lot of information over the last several weeks. And I want to be sure that we have a complete document that's set, that's fully understand all the numbers. I ask you for all of your emails, said, please send us the latest plan. And if there's anything else that we need, and we'll work through the city. So nowhere in that was that rude, nowhere in that
I
did it
didn't
say
intend it
that.
was rude.
But you also said that we wouldn't meet. When you told me there would be no negotiating, I'm not sure there's a reason to meet at that point when you stated that we will no longer negotiate. I also have an email from July 28th asking for 3 examples of TIF projects with apartments complexes that was never provided to me. So whenever you said there were many, I asked for that. That was something we didn't get. I acknowledge that we met. We wanted to meet. So I just want that stated, that there was lots of good communication going back and forth and that we did meet.
I think I'd kind of like to move on this, because the thing is, there seems to be no real particular resolution to this. While I think it's a very positive thing that applicants and the school districts are able to meet and converse. I think we've gotten to a point here to where it's just basically turning into a he said, she said. I think we really kind of need to move on to what the matter at hand is, which is the financial component. Ms. Wilson, you indicated you wanted to say something?
That's what I was going to say, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I just, if I could just make one last comment on that.
We need to put a plug in it, but go right ahead.
But I
Make it short,
I
please.
understand, yes. You said for the sake of transparency, when the conversations took place early with the school district, we never had a total package. Didn't have cost benefit, but we didn't have the entire thing put together. And it's not until those later exchanges did we get that. And then at that point in time, we were like, whoa, we can't go along with this, right? Whereas before, we were trying to find out a way to help fund the blight remediation, but we were never given the total thing, the total package. So if we're talking about transparency, they were trying to get a commitment of a percentage level from us, and we couldn't give that to them when we don't have all the information, if that makes sense to everybody, just filling in the blanks. So yes.
It does make sense, but like I say, while it is preferred, it is not a requirement so far as I can tell. Certainly it's good to know that there was conversation going on. With that, unless there are further questions of the applicant, we will go to the next person.
I actually do. I would like comments on the shorter term for the TIF, and then I would like comments on the explanation of the asbestos increasing in cost and why that was missed and what the explanation is for the increased cost now.
Let me answer the asbestos one. Just like a lot of things right now, cost of everything, just resubmitting, getting updated bids from our contractor who's approved for mitigation of asbestos costs are just on the rise. So,
And do you remember the timetable, like when you got that bid versus obviously now?
I could
Estimate.
provide that to you because we had our first bid shortly after I purchased the building. So we had one 3 years ago. And then when we
Okay.
had the blight study done, we had an updated one done at that point in time. And then we just most recently so the first figures that we had were from, if I had to guess, they were probably at least a year and a half. This one is recent.
And then comments on the shorter term for the TIF that's been mentioned by a few different people, a 10-year versus a 15-year versus 23 years. Obviously, at some point we are getting into profit, and I fully respect that developers want to make profit, but I also can sympathize with the position that the developer getting those incentives beyond some of this is something we need to consider for the tax-paying jurisdictions.
I'm gonna let Don answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we did look at a number of different things. As proposed right now, we would be capturing 70% of the pilots. If we captured 100% of the pilots, it still is like a 15-year. Just for us to get the same economic benefit that we feel is necessary to make this worthwhile and to make it worth doing. So if you were to shorten it to 10 years, it won't happen. It just won't. And it's the 30% at the 23 years just works out to about the absolute minimum that this makes any sense to do it.
Thank you.
Further questions of the applicant? Mayor Boley, I believe you are the next person to come forward to speak, please.
And I won't take 40 minutes by any means. I know almost everyone here, and I just want to clarify a few things since we don't have an open comment policy here. Municipal Code 155.020, Economic Development Committee shall have 9 members, 1 member of the Board of Aldermen, 1 representative from the Chamber of Commerce, 1 representative from the Smithfield School District. We have one, they help develop the policy. 5 years ago, I was elected after a contentious TIF, as many of you know, and you've talked about that. We do have a TIF policy, it's on our website. Shortly after being elected, the first person I met with is our current school board president, Jeff Blumker. He's texting me right now about his unhappiness with the comments from their representative today. If you can't control your emotions and come comment at this and you're a paid person from the school district, you probably shouldn't be here. School board president and I meet often. The superintendent and Cynthia met often. The interim superintendent and Cynthia meet often. There's plenty of open communication. Our boards meet quarterly up until recently. We've had a lot of conversation around this, and I was asked to come tonight in case you guys need an extension. I'm not going to comment on the project. I'm going to comment on the activity of this board. You guys have a decision to make. We don't need to extend this forever, but I am here in case it does need to be extended. But our previous superintendent and our previous school board president of many, many years told me many, many times, if there's ever an example of blight in a TIF project in this community, it's right across the street from this building. That's all. And Cynthia, on behalf of myself and Jeff, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Comments or questions of the mayor? Seeing none. Next person to come forward would be Christine. I hope I'm pronouncing Bunch. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I do want to commend, Eric Craig for purchasing the building. I've speculated on that building for many years. So I do commend him for purchasing the building. It does have a tree growing out the middle, so I definitely understand the eyesore and I definitely understand the potential demolition that is necessary and potentially even having TIF dollars for the demo of that. I completely understand that. To my understanding, if the TIF votes no, that the aldermen can still vote yes to demo and use TIF monies. So I think a lot of citizens that I've talked to during this election period, that is what they were more in favor of. I do understand cost and I understand the percentage of these dollars not being a high ROI for the developer. Why? Because in 2019, I did respond to an RFP and I was going to enter into a residential development 5-story building. And I was very clear in the emails that I wrote to the city that even Jennifer Lang Justice can read because she requested them. I was asking for 0 TIF money. Why? Because I'm a 1991 graduate and I care about this community. I care about our schools and our schools are suffering. So to take more money away from the kids, I do think that is a problem. There are costs that are higher with a new building versus refurbishing one. And I don't even know what the costs are on demoing one with asbestos. So I can imagine it's very high. But as a developer, obviously he knew that going into it. Although I respect Eric Craig, I do understand he knows the numbers and I know investors and banks, they are looking at the bottom line. I am a taxpayer, I am a stakeholder, and I don't understand why I would have to pay money for a developer to have a higher ROI. Just doesn't make sense. I am supportive of the demo though, with the TIF money. So if the TIF committee here voted no, then the alderman can still vote yes for the demo. Mr. Royds, you said something very important. You said that there should be a solid policy. While although Mayor did cite one, I will tell you, I have submitted as a stakeholder in this community an application several times to sit on committees, to be a part of our community in a volunteer capacity. I've submitted my resume, I've submitted my application. I even I even tried to get myself voted in as alderman and I keep being told no. Why? Because I don't go exactly with how the city wants me to go. I go with what maybe taxpayers are talking about. People are afraid to speak up in our community. And so I do agree that the solid policy does need to happen, and I would be honored to sit on the EDC committee. And Mayor, I'm publicly asking to be on a committee. I need to be involved. Why? Because there are people in our community that are afraid to speak up. Thank you.
Were there any questions or comments?
The only thing I'll say, Christine, is the asbestos charge is spelled out clearly in the plan, and that was on the Smithville website for this.
Once again, I want to go back to our members online. Any comments, questions? No? Okay. I do want to get some technical information from council if that's, I think as we go forward, seems to me we have a couple of different options before us. One would be to deny altogether. One would be to continue. The other would be to approve. Now, that's where my technical question comes into play, and I think I know the answer, but I would rather get the absolute authoritative version of this. We're presented with one plan at the previous meeting. We've been presented with changes to that plan. What I'm interested in is procedure. And I have basically two questions. One is do we, and I don't think we do, but do we as a commission, should we adopt those changes before we vote? And secondarily, when I ask for, if a motion is made, should that motion distinguish between either the prior or the proposal as amended? So if you could kind of give us a little bit of a background on that before we go forward, I think that'd be helpful.
Yep. So I updated the resolution to include that there was a revised TIF plan. So I think the motion should be the TIF plan as revised. And then we can vote on the resolution. The resolution already contemplates the revised TIF plan. So if you would prefer to take a vote on not the revised TIF plan, then we can work out a way to revise the resolution. But as it stands, the resolution contemplates the revised TIF plan, and I think the motion could be the TIF plan as revised.
So, and I'm just trying to, I'm wanting to relate it to the world I'm used to at the county commission. So obviously we do as amended resolutions. So if, just to repeat that back so that we have it straight, in other words, a motion would be in order that said that they would like to approve or disapprove the plan as revised, or a similar motion to either approve or disapprove the original proposal. Is that
Yes,
accurately
and
stated?
we are going, so the agenda, once we close the public hearing, you could vote on the resolution. And so voting yes on the resolution would obviously approve it. Voting no would then, if a majority votes no, then that would be a recommendation in opposition. So I would say, go ahead and when you're ready, close the public hearing. And then if there's any further discussion, make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Is the
Thank you.
resolution in this
Yes.
packet?
Yes, it
Okay,
is in
because
there.
this is,
And maybe what we do is take baby steps and walk through it.
I just want to
First
read
step,
it at least
yeah, the
first.
first step is to close the public hearing, and then we could probably get further guidance. maybe,
And
I
that
think.
brings me to my last question, and that is, first off, is there anyone else wishing to speak? I see.
I have a couple more questions on my side.
Okay, I actually, because we're going to be doing, because when we close public hearing, it would no longer be open to witnesses unless we inquire of them. But so you can go ahead, and once we have closed the public hearing, I think discussion relevant to that
Then we
would
can
be in
discuss at
order.
that point.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
am I correct on that?
developer would still be able to discuss.
No.
We would, no,
Okay,
we
I-
would,
I'm not ready to close the public hearing.
okay,
then, to be
and that
clear.
was, that's another thing. So if we were to close the public hearing and we could inquire of the, okay, so that totally precludes that.
Stay open.
No, let's stay open if we're
Yeah.
gonna be.
And then the other piece of closing the public hearing is you are going to do a yes or no vote on what's in front of you. So if you think that you're going to negotiate, it cannot be in a close.
There
You
is
cannot
a-
Close it.
There's
So-
still room to negotiate, but not nearly with the amount. I mean, before you close the public hearing, you can change practically anything in a TIF plan after you close the public hearing. But before an ordinance, the limitations on what can change in a TIF plan are severely hindered.
You're basically locking the developer.
Yes.
out.
Right. So-
Developers out of it at that point.
And that brings me to my final point, and that is probably the first question before us right now is, do we want to close the public meeting or do we want to continue it? So that would be probably our first, I don't know that it requires a vote, but certainly I would want to get a sense.
I have another question for the developer before we.
Okay,
close.
well, I won't close it until I get this point straightened out, then I'll go to you if that's.
Sorry, that was loud. Just to clarify, we can keep talking. We don't have to close the public hearing. So tonight, just overall, you can close the public hearing and vote. We can continue the public hearing, but it requires the mayor to request an extension for a certain amount of days, et cetera. And then you all have to vote on continuing it. The majority has to vote on continuing it. So
Okay, so prior to taking up the question of possibly closing the public meeting, I want to go through and make sure, in fact, I think I may just go through each member and make sure, because I'd like to make sure that everybody has had the access that they would like to the developer and any other sources. So, Ms. Wilson?
Question is, which plan? I mean, no, in all honesty, I mean, we've got two different plans here. If we choose to go with plan one, does that detrimentally affect what you need to do? If we would vote for plan one and it's a yes, let's say. Which plan, does
Yeah,
it,
I
does it
mean,
matter to you which plan?
I
moves
mean,
forward?
dollars wise, it doesn't. But I can't remember the gentleman that was here from the library.
Adam, or no,
No.
not Adam.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, that was information that was brought to us. So again, we're trying to, I mean, there's other entities that are involved, so that's when we change the figures, but dollars wise for us. So I guess it's an either or. I think that me personally, just knowing everyone here, I just would put that at your guys' decision and what you guys think is best with.
And I'm just going to go around the table, then I'm going to ask our members online. Any further questions or comments before we start moving towards something here?
Yeah, 'cause I mean, we're talking about possible continuance. Is there any point? That's my question. It sounds like there's just so much bad blood between the school and the developer. That is there even any point in doing a continuance? Because there is no negotiation if there's no trust, and it seems like there is a lot of vitriol. I think a lot of us here feel like we're maybe caught in the middle. It's not a great feeling, right? We'd probably all like to see some sort of win-win if possible, but I'm just curious if that's even feasible. That's my big question out there, is whether or not the school and the developer can negotiate in good faith, or if just those bridges have already been burned.
Well,
Did you want, oh.
I'm
just
just
the-
gonna,
is that
I
just
want
the
everybody to
point?
have a
Okay.
shot, and then we can do. You have any comment or question?
I do have comments and questions. You know, as a citizen, as a taxpayer, looking at this, and I keep going, I'm just gonna use the old numbers because that's what's open on my book. You know, the school district is only receiving $4,000 a year. At the end of the 23, 48,000 versus 1.1 million. I just can't see how that's not a benefit to the school district. And I know, what is the amount that you get per student from the state? So if they get 10 kids in this apartment building, how much additional funding do you get per student?
I guess the biggest thing is just understanding the cost to the school district, and that's about $11,000 per student.
Okay,
So if you get 5 kids times that.
got you. Okay, so I'm just trying to do.
Yeah.
In which plan would the school district rather see the 30% across the board for all, or would you rather us go back to the original plan where you do make more? I'm
Yeah.
just asking.
Well,
I'm truly just trying to understand.
All we've wanted from the
Mhm.
beginning is a reasonable request
Mhm.
on the reimbursable cost, which is your exhibit D.
Mhm.
Okay? Because if you don't have a reasonable request there, then
Mhm.
the amount gets really excessive, and that's where we get off.
But I'm just looking at between the two plans that we have, I'm just trying to figure that, because I just
Go
think it's
ahead,
just a
Denise.
win-win for the community. It's just gonna generate so much more for our community.
You know, I guess I'd like to start by saying, you know, we are passionate
Mhm.
and we're heated, and I don't love the idea that we're so far gone that we can't have a amicable
Mhm. Right.
conversation, because I don't believe that. I think we disagree on this. I think we have seen some good things too. So I know personally for me, I don't like that it's all or nothing. But I am a steward of the taxpayers' dollars. That's my job, is to be a steward of the school district because, you know, we're not a nonprofit, you know, it doesn't go into our pocket. And so if looking at that, you know, you ask which would be better, you know, we're getting 1 point whatever million. Well, without a TIF, we'd be getting twice as much. And so when
If
we're
something was
looking-
there is what I'm saying.
Right.
That's
But
the
without-
what
but we're
if.
looking at without a TIF,
Mhm.
it would be twice as much. And so what could we do for our students and staff with that?
Right.
That's where I'm coming from.
And I
That's-
get
that's
that, but
why
I'm
it's
just looking at
not-
what we have
so-
in front of us.
Right, but that's where I'm coming from. And so with that, you know, we talked about last time, only 5 kids. We have a couple other places and there's 65 students there. We
Right.
can't keep kids out. You know, we talked about
Right.
that last time too, that we just wouldn't allow kids to move in. Well, you know, there's the Fair Housing Act and, you know, the Missouri Human Rights Act, that can't happen. So, you know, we have to allow kids. So it's, we don't know. Neither one of us know how many kids will be there. We don't know. There could be kids. And so I guess when I go to, I don't have an answer for you, Kelly. I don't want, you know, I don't have an answer. All I know is I just want the best for our kids
Right.
and for our school. And it is unusual for there to be residential type TIFs. And yes, there's 11% commercial. I get that. So even if we doubled it, you know, we're looking at 25%, not, you know, 70 for, you know, now it's a 30% cut or whatever. So
Yeah,
that's where
you're-
I'm from.
You're
coming
talking
from.
about a difference in real current year dollars. The disagreement comes down to somewhere between $300,000 to $450,000. So to say that we're way off, no, right? It's just an unwillingness to move off of the concept of removing the blight versus
And I get that.
paying for the construction, right? And it's not a lot of dollars, right? And I think your reference was to since nothing was built there or nothing happens there. Well, the assumption is nothing happens for the next 23 years, right? But if nothing happens for the next 23 years, we actually have no cost there. So we are in better economic benefit in that position if there is nothing. So anyway, hopefully that fills. in
Right,
the
but they
blanks.
get another what if it's built and there's 0 kids in there and you're still profiting? I mean, that could go that direction too.
It could,
So.
it could. Yep.
The only other thing I would add is that the school district board resolution that was handed out was January 18th, 23. And I would venture to say that when this was made, there has been a lot of development. And I don't know if it was specifically developed in regards to this project, but this is pretty old compared to the data that's become available. So the request in this from the Board of Education, I don't know if they met again on this and talked about it, but it just seems that there was a lot of comments about the timeliness and the negotiations, et cetera. And this is from January 18th of this year.
Is that a question regarding why it was established then?
Why was it not revisited in a different meeting? Is this just the policy that the district wants to have, period?
It's more of an annual thing.
It's not, it's not a policy, it's a resolution just stating, because as we see moving forward in our community, this is just best practice in school districts. As I've reached out to schools in the KC metro area, this is a very common practice, whether you're in Park Hill or Platte County, wherever, you're looking at what school districts typically, you know, utilize. So no, we haven't revisited it. This is kind of our.
Because this
stance.
is just something that we do annually, not versus specific to this project.
It's not been that, this is just the first time we've established this.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Well, I guess if you just want to say, do I want to keep it open and have more questions? The answer is yes. So,
It was
to
that,
expedite.
but it's also just general. I might make sure everybody gets
Kind
to
of,
say.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think I've been chiming in. I mean, the differences are not large, right? But the little tweaks that are being done with the numbers actually make a significant difference. That's the big difference here, right? So, so when we're just talking about dollars and cents, it's really not much, right? Because $300,000 to $450,000 is not a lot of money whenever you're looking at this, when you have $5 million at play. So.
The only thing I would like to add is, I think the county reassessed my house this year and it went up 30%. So I don't know how many other people got a reassessment. But it looks to me like the school would be in line for a very large more money to their school district.
There is some Hancock that comes in and Jerry's probably
Yeah,
more
we're-
familiar than
we're-
with me,
I
but
can't do that.
that would be separate.
State law doesn't allow us to.
The Hancock comes in on that.
Yeah, the Hancock
limits.
Amendment is a state law that that disallows us to capture the entire amount.
What it does is it lowers the actual assessment rate down so that it only can go so far above the previous numbers. So it requires a rollback of that levy rate.
So in other words, we don't get all
I'll-
that.
you'll get all that.
They'll get some,
I
but
just
they
gotta
don't get
pay it
all
all.
that.
Let's go somewhere else.
I feel like I've said my piece. at this point.
Keep the forum open.
Yes, I'd like to keep the forum open. I have two parts of that. One, this would be the time to negotiate. If you have something that you want to negotiate with, or what did you open with, this is the time to bring it up while the floor is still open. Also, in the time limit, if we want to change that, this is the time to negotiate that. If we don't want to go 23 years, we can go 20, we can go 17. I mean, we can go anywhere. So this is the time to do that negotiating and not close.
Something I had a question about was, I'm gonna ask for a couple of numbers just so I can get my arms around this a little more. What is the cost to educate? I realize it varies, but what is the average cost to educate a student in this school district? $11,000. And what is the money coming in from the state? Because I realize that varies from school district to school district. How much of it is local contribution? How much of it is state funding? For instance, Liberty gets a higher percentage, a lower percentage from the state than say North Kansas City School District, if I
I
remember
think
correctly.
the 11,000 is the total number. I think Robert can give us the.
Our
breakdown.
CFO's here, if he could speak. to
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, it's not the entire 11,000, so I'm trying to sort of quantify the impact a little bit more clearly in my own mind.
My name is Robert Hedgeworth. I'm the CFO for the school district. So we are reimbursed from the state from what's called WADA, which is weighted average daily attendance. So what that means is there's a lot of factors taken in. Attendance is one of them. And then how your daily attendance times a lot of things like free and reduced lunch, your special education, and it comes out basically to a formula. Right now, last year, we were just over $4,300 a student. Something else I want to mention was the Hancock Amendment, just to give you a direct definition of that. So when your assessment comes in at, let's say, 15% higher than it was in years past, the Hancock Amendment limits what the school district can realize. So you basically look at your CPI that DESI takes, and you have to take the lower of CPI or 5%. So let's say CPI is 3% for the year. That's all we can realize. We have to lower our tax levy to only realize that amount. This last year CPI was above 5%. So what we'll be able to realize is only 5% gain. We will be lowering our tax levy when it comes around in the fall to keep in alignment with the Hancock Amendment.
Yes, the school district and all other taxing.
That is correct.
jurisdictions.
All jurisdictions have to follow that. So.
This past fall, the county obviously had to lower ours because of Hancock requirements. And we chose in fact to lower it below the Hancock levels.
Right.
So, yeah, I do understand that, and having been involved in school funding formula negotiations, I do get that.
Sure. The last part, commercial versus residential. Yes, there are financial transactions that happen when people rent, but the definition changes. You have children that we educate, and we have expenses with that. So that's a big thing when we kick out how about commercial versus residential, why it's important for a district. For example, the one TIF we do have does not bring any children. And we have a 40% surplus with that. This is only a 30%, and this is going to bring children. So that's another reason why we keep bringing that up. So,
Thank you.
all right. Yes,
Can I-
absolutely.
Please, go ahead.
How does sales tax, does the school get any portion of sales taxes if you see increased economic activity? Like if, let's just say hypothetically, a building like this can help revitalize a downtown, you have second, third order effects, we have more businesses coming in, you have more dollars, you have velocity of money changing.
Sure.
Does the school get any of that?
We do not get sales tax.
No sales tax.
No sales tax. Yeah, that goes to the city. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll go right around and I think I've got some answers, but I'll just start back here because we've got the answers here, but I'm trying to get, this is not a vote necessarily, but this is just get a sense of what the commission feels. Are you in favor of continuing or acting this evening? Thank you. Okay.
I'm in the same boat as Linda. I think I want to continue until everybody's had a chance to say.
Don?
I don't have an opinion.
No opinion, okay.
Continue right now until we resolve some of these matters.
Jennifer?
Well, last time we went until 9 o'clock, I believe, and so we still have a good amount of time this evening to try and work through
I would
this.
like
I wasn't
s-
interested in going for record necessarily. But no, please, I'm sorry, I'm being facetious, but let's know what your preference is, and we can keep talking. We can come back if we talk a little more. We can, of course. This is not a formal vote. I'm just trying to get a feel for what the commission wants to do so I can help
My
guide
preference
us.
would be to utilize another hour of everyone's time since they came out tonight and we all blocked this off our schedule to see if we can resolve this. And if we can't, then we should continue.
I would like to continue this hour and try and act on this tonight.
I'm willing to continue if it's gonna reach a resolution, but if it's gonna remain acrimonious, then I'm not sure that it's worth staying here another hour. If it's gonna get heated and people's tempers are gonna flare, maybe it's best to take a step back and negotiate between the parties that are having issues and come back.
Listen,
I'm okay with staying tonight. And I honestly don't know that we can come to a resolution tonight, because if we throw things out, then I would think the developer is going to have to go back and crunch some more numbers or something. I think we need to put it to a vote and be done with it, truthfully.
all right, the preponderance of what is the preference expressed has been to continue, but I do think we could continue a little bit more. Now, can we come to a resolution tonight? Would then another hour or hour and a half of conversation bring us to a point to where the commission would care to take a vote on this? Because to do that is going to require a motion. And I want to make sure that we are all comfortable with where we are. We need to be ready to vote. I would also make some caution. Yes, sir.
Two other members.
Steve.
Oh,
Steve and Barbara.
thank you very much for pointing that out. I am sorry. Steve?
Yeah, I'm okay with continuing to talk tonight, but I'm ready to act tonight also.
Okay. And we have another member?
She's just viewing.
Oh, just viewing. Okay. I was trying to sort that out. Okay, I don't know that we can necessarily come to a conclusion. I think one of the things that we have to consider on this is if we do end up continuing this for another meeting, this impinges upon the ability of the developer to go forward, because we are getting into the construction area here. That's not a reason to act unless we're ready, but it is, I think, a consideration that we should be taking into account, and that is we were 3 weeks between this last meeting and this meeting. So I would think we've got at least that period of time that we would be looking for going forward. So that concerns me a little bit, but once again, it's a concern, but it is one that I think we need to just take in with other concerns.
My question would be of Scott, you said you would provide some hard numbers that would be easy math, so I would like those numbers.
You would like the common sense
Yes,
math?
yes, I would.
Well, can I go over a couple things first?
Yes, please.
All right. I did have a question on pay off existing debt for $70,000 to the developer. What is that line item? What existing debt for what?
Please come to the microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just existing debt that's on the property,
Which property?
on the property that they purchased.
The old hospital?
Is that a hospital? Is that a lot? I guess
Which
they don't own all the
property?
lots, but there's also Eric's
It
building.
might be easier to identify that by the map location.
Well, if it's one of these two, we have a problem, right?
That's what I wanted to identify. Yeah.
It's
It's the little white house that's right next to the hospital project that was also included in the blight study.
So it's for the house. So you're essentially wanting that paid off too.
But we gotta tear it down and it's got same cost to take down. Yes.
All right.
Required with the loan.
That's a part of the loan they're
part
trying
of
to
our
put in
loan,
there.
yeah.
That's
for
what
the
I'm
soft
assuming
costs.
is the reason it's being asked for is because it's a requirement to get the financing that you're
Right.
seeking.
I,
So-
I do just want to clarify that payoff of existing debt is not a reimbursable project cost that they're requesting, so that would not be financed with TIF revenues. Yeah, it's not.
But it is going to be important in our common sense math question.
Okay,
But if it's not included, how can it be?
Well,
just
we'll
let him
get to
present.
that fun part. We did have a question to the city about the collection of utility taxes on this. The answer was no, they're not planning on collecting utility taxes. That's a part of EATS. Okay. I'm not sure. That starts getting, if you remember the comment that was made by Gilmore Bell and the TIF educational course that we all attended, several of us attended. And my understanding was exactly what that understanding was, which is legally you collect 100% of pilots and 50% of EATS. You don't get to pick and choose not to collect the taxes. Okay. When you choose not to collect the taxes, well, then the utility taxes in this on EATS, that benefits the city of Smithville. Okay, when you don't collect the utility taxes from that, it's 100% going back to the city of Smithville, which means that Mr. Nolte and Clay County here will pick up the other portion. So if Mr. Nolte was paying for 25% of this project, now he's paying for 28 to 30% of this project because the city is choosing not to pick up the utility taxes, which I'm not sure is legal in the first place. And I'm sure we're going to have a disagreement on it. Understood, right? Kansas City requires it. Okay, I'll pass out for public record the collection of utility taxes in Kansas City, so everybody can have a copy. How it's done.
I'm just
We-
gonna comment though, in regards to Kansas City, they're not doing things above the belt in other realms. Just for example, they are not giving Clay County their fair shake on TIF commissions, et cetera. So I'm not sure I want to use them as an example for a stellar,
Well, I will say they're capturing their utility taxes at least.
so they're doing one thing right.
So if the city captured that, would that help the school's position?
So, correct. So what?
Negotiating?
Yeah. So what you're getting at is you would collect more taxes, which would mean less burden to other districts, right? We got another one or two down there. I'm sorry.
Two more if possible.
Probably public record down there for Ms. Miller.
One more.
So we'll have issue with that. And again, you're starting to get in that legal gray area of not collecting all the taxes. Here, we did some rough estimates, and I'll pass this out for public record too. What also is not very obvious from the numbers that you have on the cost benefit analysis in Exhibit E is that they're not collecting the sales tax on the material from the actual building of the apartment complex. That seems to be common sense, right? The only time sales tax starts getting collected is when a restaurant opens or whatever. Again, when you're not collecting all the taxes, that benefits the city of Smithville. That doesn't benefit anybody else. That means that we are paying for more of it. This is a very conservative estimate. As you can see, all we did was electricity cost up top We know that there's more utilities that collect taxes. But I just did a rough estimate on electricity. Okay, on the bottom part, we might overestimate because we did 70% on material costs. That might be an overestimate, but on the top part, we're underestimating. So you can just get a general idea that there's maybe a possible under collection of $300,000 plus dollars. It could be 400,000. This is not what we're supposed to be doing, right? So that should be a part of what we're talking about when we're talking about collection of taxes. When you put that into the consideration, that looks a little different, right?
Just a quick question. Do utility taxes go into the general fund? I know this is, but we're talking about it, so
Yes, they do.
thank you.
And also to pass out in public record again. TIF 101. Paperwork written by Gilmore Bell. Talking about the collection of taxes in TIF. Sir. So you should have highlighted there, if you went to the far right-hand column, does a municipality have to capture the maximum pilots and eats allowed by the TIF Act? The technical answer is yes. And then it says, but the practical answer is no. The no part of that is whenever they start going into the conversation about surplusing it back, right? But the answer is yes, you collect all your taxes, right? The highlighted items in the middle, it highlights eats, the definition of eats, the taxes to be collected with eats. So again, concerning that we're not collecting all of our taxes, because if we're not collecting $300,000 to $400,000 worth of eats, that means that Mr. Nolte and Clay County and the school district and the library district and others that are more on the property tax side are making up the difference. So that obviously is a significant issue. And again, we're getting into that legal gray area that I'm not sure that's even legitimate, right? So. If we wanted to look at Exhibit D, reimbursable project cost.
In the TIF packet? Or,
And the TIF packet.
okay.
Exhibit D, old or new.
Oh.
No, it doesn't
Thank you for
matter.
clarifying. I'm in the old.
Yeah, well, it's okay. You'll get the general
Okay.
idea. Are we all there yet? What's in question? Are you there, Jennifer?
Go ahead.
Okay. What's at question is the categories of land value. We believe that those should not be included. That is just a part of doing business when you're building an apartment complex. Also, that's kind of a bad public policy when you're talking about TIF, as you're setting the precedent for the next TIF to come in. An expectation of 100% paying for land value. The hard cost is the other line item. In the new version, it's $13,308. In the old version, it's $250,000. Having those two separate line items, it seems very innocent at first, but that's where the math gets exceptionally bad for the taxpayers. It gets exceptionally good for the developers. We've been okay with demolition, utilities, and that middle part, right? That's blight remediation. That's the responsibility of taxpayers. Again, if you look at the affidavit, point number 4, the responsibility that we are taking on is the remediation of blight. You can see it yourself. What they're trying to do, again, is include cost categories to basically guarantee them a set profit.
As we go forward, I think it's because it's been observed that there have been kind of tempers have flared a little bit. I think any characterization of motivation on the part of any of the parties is probably not appropriate and not conducive to these negotiations. And by the way, this is not where we negotiate these things. You can certainly, I am okay with you stating what your concerns are, but this is not a negotiation.
Right.
And I said, kind of refrain from characterizing motivations or anything like that. Just keep it factual, please.
Kelly, you're gonna say something.
I would, no, I'm not gonna add to.
Yeah. And no accusations. Our concerns are it's excessive, which we've said from the beginning.
That's
So,
certainly valid
Yeah.
to say if you have concerns.
okay, thank you. So the common sense math on it, right? So we can go talk about worry about IRRs, returns, cost benefit, not having cost, yada, yada, yada. A lot of it's a distraction, right? The main number that you should worry about on the cost benefit is the $4.7 million over 23 years. Okay. So what they're doing is discounting that. So what you should be able to do is when you look at your exhibit D, all right, with those reimbursable costs there in the middle, you should be able to say, I have an item, we'll say demolition for $480,000. Okay. A reasonable person, and again, common sense, if the numbers are working to where we can make sense of it all, you should be able to say $480,000 times an interest rate over a time period of years gives you a certain other number. We'll say $530,000 over 5 years, right? Or $550,000, something reasonable. That's how much you're going to expect for that line item to pay off that line item, right? That's what common sense tells you. In this case, under this current plan, 480,000 becomes $1.8 million. Okay, it's not double and it's not triple, it's more. All right, so I'll pass this out so you guys can digest it a little bit. And that's across the board. So again, that's not me making up numbers. That's just trying to do common sense math. Because if they do the net present value calculation, you do your cost and your benefits, everything looks appropriate. At the end of the day, you should be able to look at a certain line item and put common sense to it. So on the far right-hand side is the new breakout. There's your budgeted items, 23,000, 285,000, 480,000, so on down. On the far right-hand side is actually how much tax dollars are going to the developer. So what are you paying for after you've paid double the cost? What have you paid for after triple the cost? That's when you start getting into where you're really just paying soft costs and everything else. You don't know what you're paying for, to be quite honest. And so that's where, again, we just wanted to have a common sense conversation with the developer and put something together that was best for our community. Sure. That's public records. Pass it around the crowd if you want.
Okay, so there's a lot of material you've kind of put out here. Here's where I think we need to go on this thing is, yeah, we do need to discuss. Now, right now, the way I read the consensus of the commission is we are not ready to take this up for action. What I think I need to get from everyone is, because if we continue this thing, that is detrimental to the process. What I don't want to do is something that again, during my time in the legislature was referred to as loving it to death. I don't think we need to talk this thing to death. We're going to have to come to some kind of a conclusion. If it is the will of this commission to put this off for another meeting, I think it is absolutely important that we need to walk out here tonight minimally with what it's going to take for the members of this commission to make a decision, whether it's more information, whatever it is. But if we can't make a decision tonight, then we really need to make it at the next meeting, because if that doesn't happen, what we're doing here is we would end up killing this project by the back door. And I don't think that's something we need to do. I think we need to stand up and say, look, this is either good or it's bad. I am not willing to sit here and allow this thing to be talked to death. We're going to have to make a decision, ladies and gentlemen, and no decision is a decision. So if we do not come to some conclusion tonight, I'm going to want to know what questions they need to be answered. And if we don't come up with if you can't come up with a decision after the amount of time that we've had to talk about this and consider it, then I think there's something wrong here. Like I say, this is a decision that has to be made. We are all here to make a decision, not to endlessly delay and end up compromising it to where it is no longer a viable process or project, excuse me, sir.
Yeah, thank you for letting me come up here. I did want to chime in from the perspective of the developer. You know, first and foremost, we will do whatever you guys recommend that we do. Absolutely. If more time's needed, we're there. More discussions need to be had, we're there. But from our perspective, for our opinion on this topic, we would ask that you do move forward this evening with a vote on the project. You know, some of the items that Mr. Nolte talked about, we're getting into some, you know, the project becomes hampered by delay, and the delay can kill projects. One of the things that's been pointed out is, you know, numbers change. Well, numbers are certainly going to change the more we delay. Costs go up, supplies go up, things change. You know, it can be good or bad, but that's the point, is that no one knows. You know, a point was made earlier tonight that, and it's a very valid point, which is, you know, seems to be some acrimony, and I can say from my perspective, you know, I don't want there to be any acrimony, but if you put all of that aside, just from a purely perspective of where the school district appears to be at and where we appear to be at. And I know I'm biased, but please do remember that we, for a long time, have been negotiating against ourselves on this project. We started at a certain percentage. We moved down to another percentage. We moved down to another percentage. It was decided that we should do a surplus version of the plan. We've done that. I don't blame the school district for any of those things, because the school district has been pretty clear. They've been very consistent that they don't care for the project. They've indicated that they're looking for a sort of demolition only version. Those two things just don't really go together. We've continually tried to come down to somewhere that can be reasonable. I'm not convinced that additional negotiation on those particular points has nothing to do with these parties having acrimony. I know that, but that it's a fundamental difference of opinion. When we're talking percentages and surpluses, which last meeting we kind of felt like, well, that might get us across the finish line. But here there's still handouts, and we're talking now about, you know, our numbers are made up and, you know, demolition only. So point is I don't know what can be gained from additional time. We will certainly take it and use it to the best of our advantage and do whatever you would like us to, but we would request that this issue be moved on, voted this evening.
Do you have any comments on the document that was provided to you?
Well, what I can say, and unless Don wants to jump up here, but you know, I mean, it's just a document we got right now. I'm not exactly, you know, we have to, just like any other.
I wanted to hear your side of the story.
But wait, before we do this, thing is, I do think we need to understand the gentleman just got these documents. Now, if you
Yes.
have some thoughts, I'd certainly be willing to share them, but the thing is, it is not fair to give somebody, I don't know how many pages
Yes.
we've got, and then ask for comment in a public forum that would have some impact on these proceedings. So while you are certainly welcome to answer the question if you would care to, I, for one, certainly understand where you would exercise prudence in the matter.
I think with this many numbers and this many tables, something we would have to digest.
Well, in fairness, you just asked us to make a decision tonight. So just saying.
No, I understand that. I think that the various numbers can be dissected and looked at by different, Don's a professional, has been doing this for a long time. If that's part of the continuance process that you guys want those items addressed, I understand that. But I do think that we feel confident in our numbers. We've readjusted those numbers and we will continue to work with the panel on those numbers. But yeah, to Mr. Nolte's point, I can't right now.
I understand.
I don't know exactly, you know, any assumptions that were put into those numbers, what, you know, how they were arrived at, et cetera.
Yeah, and those numbers are just the developer numbers. They're not
We're
my
pulled
numbers.
from Exhibit D, I believe. Is that
The cost benefit of 4.7 million, and then the budget that presented for Exhibit 8 or H or whatever. Yeah.
Sure, please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Daniel Yoza with Levy Craig Law Firm. I'm also with the developer group. Yeah, I mean, Mr. Jacoby is correct. These are the numbers from the old plan and the new plan. And he took the total column, and I can't remember if it was Exhibit D or E, that showed the total amount of either developer benefit or reimbursements. It just kind of erases the net present value calculation. So like if you think money has value over the next 23 years, then this kind of just ignores that. So I mean, that's what the table does, and but it is the numbers from our plan. So that's what the table is. Do you have any questions about the table?
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I couldn't quite, you kind of faded. there.
I'm open to any questions about the table.
Those are your numbers.
Yeah,
Okay,
like he
very good.
pulled some columns out of Exhibit D
Yes,
and then put them in from the column of the 23-year benefit from either Exhibit E or.
and you're just pointing out the time value of money
Yes.
in the future versus what the table provides, which is now.
Yes, so he takes the developer budget from today, the money's gonna go in the ground today, and these are the cumulative totals of the amount of money that's gonna get spun
Today.
out of the project over the next.
And this is just the common sense approach, right? Because net present value doesn't exist in state statute, right? So
We all know that real
Right.
estate's gonna have value in the future though,
Right.
Scott. I mean, that
it
I
does.
can't get on page with this argument because I am a realtor and I know that real estate does have a future value and I know that it is going to appreciate and it is going to affect things. So this argument to me is not one that's quite frankly, it doesn't have a lot of bearing in my opinion of this subject because it's not relevant because that's not the truth. And I hear you saying it's not in the state statute, but the reality is that it's going to be more valuable over the course of time, no matter what, unless we have some huge economic recession, which is unlikely. So
No, this common sense math is just to show you, you're relying on a net present value calculation by somebody that's being paid by the developer. A lot of times happens. When this happens, you get an independent financial analysis. When they do their net present value calculation, you should be able to just do reasonable calculations, like buying a car, right? You understand if you go to Littleton Ford and you pay $40,000 for a vehicle, right? You shouldn't pay $120,000 because you financed it. Okay?
you do though.
No, for $40,000, you may end up at 54, 55. There's a reasonableness, right? It's not 3.5.
If you're being exact
times
about the
more.
numbers, no, but you do
No.
pay a lot more because
You do pay a lot
interest.
more, right? Correct. That's what I started with. When you start at 480,000, you should reasonably expect that number to be 550, 600,000 by the time it's paid off.
Over 23 years?
Well, it should be paid off earlier. If you do all the increments.
But they
and
were
the-
transparent that they were going to need to have reinvestment in the project,
Transparent about reinvestment. in the
saying that they
project.
were going to pay off and then reinvest money in the project because there's going to be additional loans after the initial loan. Isn't that correct? That's correct. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I read the document, so.
This increment is $160,000 a year minus the increment that's not even being collected. Okay, so this should pay off in a lot quicker time period. That is irrelevant about their reinvestment, right? Again, this is just simple process, simple math that you should be able to do on your own. Because at the end of the day, we're not voting because we disagree on blight remediation. Our votes tonight are essentially going to be, do you agree on this amount of funds to the developer? And that's where the disagreement is, because it just doesn't add up. And by the way, we're going to give them, when we look at our exhibit for demolition and utilities, that's little over $600,000. We give them the okay to give themselves a developer fee of almost $600,000 off the top.
We could still negotiate.
Yes, we could. That's.
Well, we
absolutely-
haven't started there, so I don't know if we need a motion to negotiate or what we need to do, but sounds like there's some negotiations that need to happen here.
Counselor, do
Excuse
you have
me.
something you wanted to chime in on?
No, sorry, Mr. Leonard mentioned, and the developer fee is also not included in the reimbursable project cost. That 600,000 is in the total cost, but not being reimbursed by the TIF.
Right. It is included in there because what that does is it increases the soft cost, right? All those line items, the parkland dedication fees to the city and stuff. All you're doing is increasing the cost of the project so you can make it look like they need more money. Basically, that's how it goes into the but-for calculation.
There's clearly
Okay.
a disagreement between the school district and the developer, and I think the rest of us have been caught somewhere here in the middle. And Scott, I appreciate that you're fighting for the school district, but in your arguments, you are leaving out a lot of other factors. And Adam was so eloquent to point out last time that there will be additional benefit to the city. And then Kelly then pointed out that if we have nothing there, we have zero revenue. And there has been zero, well, what was it, $44,000 for round numbers here. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a big picture person too. I'm not speaking in exact. But the point is, if we sit here and deliberate this and we turn them down and nothing happens, the city continues to get $0.00 essentially.
No, I think you have a fundamental, I think this has been mischaracterized the entire time, is that the school district is opposed to this. I don't know how many times that we've said we wanted to be good community partners and come to some kind of reasonable conclusion.
Bring the
Right.
negotiation forth then, that is exactly what you want, because I feel like I have yet to hear that.
Well, I just told you in the explanation, the land value,
Demo
should-
cost only, is that correct?
no,
Okay,
all right. I know that's what the developer keeps on saying, right? That's not it. Demolition, okay, if you're talking about blight remediation, again, exhibit H.
I am trying to bring this to a head for everyone. That's what I'm,
I just don't need to look at paperwork anymore because it's
Do this, Jennifer, come on.
no, let's, please.
Exhibit
Can I
H.
make a comment right quick here? Discussing and discussing and discussing. The longer we sit here, the more agitated I am getting on all of this. And I sat here and think, how many other people have owned this property in the last 10 years? And we finally have something coming to us. And we can't come to a decent agreement on the back. Something's got to be done with this property. And I don't understand why we have to continue nitpicking, in my opinion, what's going to happen.
We ready for exhibit H?
Trying to get there, a lot of paperwork. And it's very small print for those in the audience.
Like I can't.
Can't barely see it.
My readers, I don't have.
Happily, H is not terribly small print.
Is it at the back of?
Developer affidavit,
Okay, go ahead, Scott.
point number 4.
Okay.
That's the purpose of the TIF.
How do you disprove an affidavit? It's a sworn, he swears to it, right?
Just read point 4.
Yeah,
It
the
says
The
read-
redevelopment area would not reasonably be anticipated to be developed without the adoption of the tax increment financing due to the substantial cost of the Emerald, the blighted area condition of the redevelopment area.
The purpose of the taxpayers on this is to remove, let's do simpler terms, the excessive cost due to blight remediation. I can't say that word either. So just, that is a part of the state statute also, right? Is the affidavit. That has a point, right? You're, by arguing something different, you're saying that affidavit is pointless. Okay? Our role is to handle this, right? Which is the excessive cost to blight remediation. One is demolition. Okay. Utility work, most likely there's a good argument the developer has for utility work for excessive cost to blight remediation, right? Tearing down an old property, probably have to do some new utility connections. Okay, so that's another line item for open for discussion. Okay. And there's probably a part of the asphalt and landscaping, I would imagine. Right? But nothing else. That's probably your category of blight remediation. Okay. So that's when you're asking, where are we at? We're just trying to follow what state statute says, right? And we have in our affidavit. And when we add the other categories, that's why the math starts getting excessive almost. Okay. But if it's limited to blight remediation, the math looks a lot better. It's not 4.7 million over 23 years. There's some kind of reasonable cost that you can come up with 930,000 times interest over a certain amount of time. And really, you have that eats category on your cost benefit, and that's enough to pay for this whole thing. If you collected all the eats, that's very common in the Northland, is an eats only TIF. And if you looked at the eats number, according to the developer, $1.1 million in the cost benefit. We believe that that's still being under collected by another $300,000 to $400,000.
School district be happy if it was an eats only at $1.1
If
million.
it's eats only, we would have been done with this 5 minutes into the first meeting.
How come that wasn't brought up? That's the first time I've heard that direct.
We've never had an opportunity.
Trying to draw it out here, man.
Hold on. Never had an opportunity.
Correct.
We've had 2 meetings now. This is the first I've kind of heard of this. I mean, yeah, you've had opportunities. I think we need to be a little more realistic about this because we need to know where it is you're going. And I think I thought I kind of had a handle on it. It seems a bit elusive, or is it just me being a little slow on the draw?
No, that's why I continue to kind of be pointed and ask these questions because I truly value your opinion, but I do think that you're being very elusive about what you're wanting, and I am getting frustrated as well. So I'm trying to get it out.
I'm answering your questions as directly as possible.
You
Now-
take
now-
like
Oh, can I jump
10
in?
paragraphs.
Please go ahead, Adam.
To just say no, which there's obviously a contingent that is just like, no, but that might not be all of us. What do you want? That's it. What is the school willing to take or accept
Well,
to not be like a straight no?
I just,
there isn't one,
yeah,
then-
I just answered that
Or
question,
eats.
point blank. Eats only.
I know, but it's.
Collect all the eats. Well, it took us a while
Right.
to
But I
get to
will
the
say
point we
last
can
meeting,
actually.
We were told that if it could be switched to surplus, that you guys would be more on board. Eats was never brought. I just want to make sure that we're
Oh, we were just talking
And I
about
get it, but so I wish that would have been brought up last time, so then they would have had the opportunity to bring the eats
seen that from
only
their
or-
perspective.
right.
Well, you remember, we spent 2 hours
I know.
on capital improvement, whatever that was being discussed at the time. So that took up quite a bit of time and we ran out of time. So
Does the developer want to come up and speak to what they just heard? For the rest of us
yeah,
to
about
hear?
1.5 million in eats to fund it.
Honestly, I feel like we have put our best foot forward. And I would appreciate just a motion tonight, either yes or no. We want to get this project started. I wish that we could come to some sort of agreement. I really, really do. I've spent 3 years to get where I'm at right now. I know that this is, in my opinion, what's best for the community in a lot of different ways. I understand it's a tough conversation. It's a hard thing. But I believe in it. And so I just ask out of respect for your guys' time, everybody who's here's time. I think that I'm comfortable enough that I'm ready to hear what you guys have to say, yes or no. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I would like,
You go any further, Steve, you keep getting left out and I do apologize for that.
Can't hear.
Okay,
That's okay. I've been listening. I'm actually ready to move forward also. I agree with Eric.
I'd like
I
to
think
make
we
a
ought to vote yes or no tonight.
okay, yeah, here's the thing with me is here's the deal. If we vote not to accept this, it would go then to the city. The city then could do, because we are at the heart, we are an advisory board. If I understand the concept correctly, I believe I do. Endlessly delaying this thing, all that does is make it more difficult for the developer. I mean, if I could see a way forward for us to say, okay, yeah, now we can come to an agreement. But the alternative position just enunciated, I see as kind of a non-starter as far as the developer goes. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on that, and I don't mean to speak out of turn or on, before they have a chance to comment, but to me, it's like, if we had a number of questions that we had to have answered, that would be great, but it doesn't sound like we're looking at answering questions here. I'm kind of coming to the opinion of, let's just get it over with. If we're gonna vote no, let's let the developer then go to the city and make their case to the city and see if that takes it. If it's yes, then that's fine too, but I mean, I'm not sure I'm seeing the point of waiting, because it doesn't sound as though we're ever gonna come to some kind of a conclusion. Clearly we don't need a unanimous vote. It's just a majority vote to move in whatever direction. I'd like to go around again and just, I've expressed that thought. I think it's time for us to look at this again, because I asked for a sense of the commission on whether or not we should go forward with a vote tonight or whether we should continue. At that time, it was, the sentiment was to continue it to the next meeting. I think I'd like to go through this one more time and ask the commission to get a sense of the commission and see what their preference is. And then I think we need to act on that one way or the other, whether it's, I think we need to either say, yes, we're going forward. No, we're not, or we need to have a continuance, but we need to make this decision, I think, pretty shortly. Steve, I'll start with you because you just indicated what you wanted to do, but if I recall correctly, you said you were ready to pretty much render a decision this evening?
That's correct. I'd like to vote tonight.
All right. Let me get my little tally going. Melissa,
I don't think we have a choice. Developer wants us to vote tonight, so I think we should vote.
Doesn't matter to me.
it doesn't matter, okay.
Ready to vote?
Ready to vote.
All right, there's a clear change of the sentiment of the commission. Now then, so at this point, what we will do is we will close public hearing. And then I will talk about entertaining the motion. We'd been through this before, but I'd like to restate the possible motions that we would be entertaining. With that, do we need a vote to close the public hearing?
Yes.
Very well. Is there a motion?
So move to close the public hearing.
Motion has been made for the discussion. Seeing none, please call the roll. Motion was made to
Do
close.
we have a second? I didn't
Oh,
hear a
well,
second.
that's what we do.
Dawn, you
Very
seconded?
good. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, my experience usually is not to require a second, so keep forgetting. Very well. So there's been a motion, a second. I see no further discussion,
Linda
so
calls.
we're ready to go.
Kelly Kabilski,
Aye.
Adam Royds,
Aye.
Steve Sarver,
Aye.
Jerry Nolte,
Aye.
Melissa Wilson,
Aye.
Don Hanks.
Aye.
Jennifer Langston Justice. Bruce Kramer.
Aye.
Linda Buckmiller,
Aye.
Denise Harwood,
Aye.
Scott Jacoby. And Jim Staley is not on.
Thank you. With that, the public hearing is closed on this TIF commission. With that, I would entertain a motion to either, excuse me, go ahead, please. Yeah,
All
go ahead
right,
and
I
give us
bring
the,
motion. So the motion would be a motion to approve resolution number 2023-01, recommending approval of the revised 110 Smithville tax increment financing plan submitted April 14th, 2023. This is the revised plan. And redevelopment project recommending a designation of blight within the redevelopment area and other related findings, and recommending approval of a developer of record to the Board of Aldermen of Smithville, Missouri. So if you vote yes, then that would be the recommendation of approval. If it's voted down, that is a recommendation in opposition. That's what we will mark it as.
But the other plan is still.
No, 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 this is.
This is all we can do.
This is
is
the
the
revised. It's the revised.
I'd like to make a motion to disapprove the current plan because 3 times the amount of money to the developer on their reimbursable costs is just not acceptable for the taxpayers of Smithville.
technical question.
We do that.
Is a negative vote because if we vote not to
Yeah, that-
approve? I mean, we
Right.
really have to have a motion to approve.
We need a motion
and
to
that would be-
approve.
So it would it, is it fair to say that that motion is out of order?
Yes,
Okay, very well. And Counselor, I'm asking you that you've
we need a
confirmed.
motion to not confuse anybody. We'll need the motion of approval and then take your vote from there.
So is there a motion along the lines that the counselor has mentioned?
I move to approve the resolution number 2023-01. Approval of the revised 110 Smithville tax increment finance plan and submitted April 14th, 2023, and redevelopment project recommending a designation of blight within the redevelopment area and other related findings, and recommending approval of a developer of record to the Board of Aldermen of Smithville, Missouri.
Well, you made the motion and I didn't. I don't know if I could gotten that all out so well. Thank you very much. Is there
Second.
a second? Second, the motion has been made. Discussion.
Again, I would say that's exceptionally excessive for the developer to receive this amount of funds. This is not a vote about blight remediation at all. We're voting to give this developer an excessive amount of funds that's unnecessary. That's essentially what we have to explain to the taxpayers of Smithville.
Any other comments before we go to a vote? Anyone else wishing to speak? Proceed.
I think I would just like to say, we talked about not getting to what we wanted, and I think it's hard when the plan continues to change. We wanted surplus, but then it went to all the jurisdictions. And then when that happened, what just got brought back to us and said was 50%, it was 30%. So there's not really a chance to say when things change continually what we want. So again, now if this gets approved, it is taking more away than the price chopper TIF did. And as we move forward for more development, I'm just hoping this doesn't set precedent for the kids of our district.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this before we go to a vote?
Yeah, the other thing is just disapproving it allows the city aldermen to do their work, which is to approve the blight remediation. That's it, which is, again, in your affidavit, it's the point of the actual plan. Right? They're trying to deviate from the actual plan in an attempt to get an excessive amount of funds. Now, you're going to ask them if that's okay. Well, you're asking the people that are receiving the funds. What do you think they're going to say? They're going to say, yes, absolutely. I wouldn't say anything different if I was in their shoes. But again, here in the affidavit, it tells you what we should be doing for taxpayers. I would recommend that we send this to the aldermen so they can approve the blight remediation. That's the only way we can legally protect the taxpayers of Smithville. That's it.
One other technical question, Counselor. So should this be approved this evening, that does not preclude the city council from negotiating further. Is that correct? Or would they be required to stay with this specific plan?
No, there's still, they just can't enlarge the boundaries, change the general land uses, and substantially change the nature of the project. So there is still some wiggle room as to negotiations that the Board of Aldermen can do.
Just wanted to kind of make it clear that there was still some viability and some kind of negotiation. Further
As the TIF
discussion?
commission, we could show up at those alderman meeting and there not be a conflict. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, you can attend. There's not a public hearing at the Board of Aldermen.
They always allow
But there's
public
public comment at the
though.
beginning, but it just,
So-
there's not a public hearing similar to this. As you know, as there is a TIF commission, there's not a public hearing there, but public comment is.
I just wanted to make sure there was not a law that prohibited us from doing so.
No, you're citizens.
Further discussion?
I just want to make one point. I am an alderman and I had it verified before I continued on this commission that I'm able to sit here and then be an alderman.
Very good. Any other comments before we go for a vote? Seeing none, Commissioner Wilson, you're recognized to close. Just say I
With a vote?
close. I mean, you, as maker of the motion,
I made the motion.
so
I
as
guess
maker of the
now-
motion, you have you get the courtesy of the last word. So if you want to
I
close.
think I just clarified my only concern that I thought people might have with me being an alderman and sitting on this commission. So
So-
I'm done.
Commissioner Wilson closes. Please call the roll. You're not gonna sneak away that, we got
Come
you.
on, Wanda.
What are we voting on here?
Please
Reread
restate
it.
the motion in case there is any question.
Yep. A motion to approve resolution number 2023-01, recommending approval of the revised 110 Smithville tax increment financing plan submitted April 14th, 2023, and redevelopment project recommending a designation of blight within the redevelopment area and other related findings, and recommending approval of a developer of record to the Board of Aldermen of Smithville, Missouri.
Please call the roll.
Kelly Kabilski. Adam Royds,
Yes.
Steve Sarver,
Aye.
Jerry Nolte,
Aye.
Melissa Wilson, Don Hanks, Jennifer Langston Justice,
Aye, but I would like to state in my I vote, I am trusting the Board of Aldermen to do what's best for the city and the school district as well. We need to move this forward in some fashion.
Bruce Kramer,
Yes.
Linda Buckmiller, yes. Denise Harwood,
No.
Scott Jacoby,
No.
yeah, and Jim Staley is gone. So 9-2.
So vote is 9-2 for passage. Very well. That brings us to the end of this meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you.
We need a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Motion to
I'm
adjourn?
sorry.
Once
Motion to
again,
adjourn?
it's not, it's
I'm
different. from my
sorry. I
usual.
know.
Yeah, no. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion second? Okay. Please call the roll.
Would you all in favor, say aye?
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The opinion of the chair is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you.